games. It's ScrubGames. Double up. Drop a like, drop a sub, go ahead and subscribe to ScrubGames. Drop a like, drop a sub, go ahead and subscribe to ScrubGames.
How's it going, Scrub Gamers? Welcome back to another video here at ScrubGames, and today we have the next installment of my Understand How to Build series, where we go over all the leaders in a given set to help you understand how to build them to suit you and your playstyle. Now, we've done all the dark side leaders, being Piet and Vader for command, and now we're going on to the light side, and we're starting off with Admiral Holdo. So if you're interested in her, then stay tuned, and also don't forget, you can like, comment, and subscribe to help the channel out, because we're on the way to 2,000 subs. And also don't forget that you can hit that notification bell to get alerts to when my videos do drop, so you can watch them there and then, or at a later time that suits you best. So, without all out of the way, let's go ahead and help you understand how to build Admiral Holdo. So, starting off with the leader, because Star Wars is a leader-based game. Like, you can't play without one, and combined with leader and base is how you start off the game, and it's always best to kind of understand what your leader wants to do, because that's what you're going to build your deck around. And while some leaders are very generic and can do like something that doesn't require any kind of traits and stuff, some do focus on a specific kind of thing, like trait or a kind of way to play. And for General Holdo, she is the latter because she's all focused on the resistance trait. So if you're building her, you're most likely focusing on using resistance units to get a full benefit from her effect. And this is basically what she's about, because she is the command, one of the command heroic leaders. Means she's got the aspects green and white, and she deploys not too late but not too early at 6 resources, and when she does drop down, she's a free 8, so respectable power at 3, good amount of bulk in 8, and also she's one that doesn't have that new kind of deploy, so she's just a standard one like we've always seen. And also she carries the resistance trait herself, and the official trait as well. You don't get much benefit from that outside of the resistance. So, like I said, her effect is mainly around making use of resistance cards, because both sides of her effect, on like when she's deployed or when she's not deployed, are all about boosting up those resistance cards, giving them a little extra kick to them, or a little bit extra bulk. And that is through her effects, which when she's in the leader area, her effect is an action, and it costs you 1 resource and to tap her to do it. And then you are able to give a resistance unit, or a unit with a resistance upgrade on it, +2/+2 for this phase. So they get extra 2 power and extra 2 bulk. So that way, they're a little bit stronger, a little bit bulkier. But you do need to pay once. It's like one of those leaders where you have to play like in a resource deficit, because you need to have the extra resources to do it, but then you also need to have a card in the field to boost it, so you need a resistance out, and we'll kind of, when we get to seeing the cards, we'll see how many resistance cards there are, because it's not the biggest trait compared to things like Rebels and Imperials, but it is still something there. And then when she is deployed, so when she's down, now she doesn't have to just use an action, she now has to attack to trigger the effect, and it's basically the same. It's just on attack, you may give another resistance unit, or a unit with resistance upgrade on it, +2/+2 for this phase. So she can't ever hit herself, even when she's deployed. She can't ever boost herself, which is a shame, but it is what it is. But she can boost up every resistance unit, and on their deploy turn, you can potentially give a resistance card a +4/+4 to its stats. So that is pretty nice, a big buff, and that can even potentially help end the game as well. And that is General Holdo. We're not alone. Basically, quite simple. Deploys at 6, solid stats, and all about boosting up those resistance units. No really complicatedness to her. She's a very simple leader. And also do remember that, as I said too, every leader gets a showcase. And this is General Holdo's, looking pretty cool. I reckon it's one of the better ones. It's one of those ones where it's like kind of a close-up of the character, so you get to kind of see more of the character there. Quite simplified, and the colours mix pretty well, because you can clearly see here, and the cool background for when she's on the ship commanding. But do remember that with showcases, they are essentially alternative arts. They're just nice shiny arts that you kind of like higher rarity up your deck. And just like with art, art is always subjective. So if you do like it, that's fair enough. You can use it. You're going to be the one playing it. If you don't like it, it's fair enough. You don't have to play it. So remember that with showcases, with arts, it's all down to your perspective and it's your view that counts, because you're the one using the card. Now that we've covered the main bit of information with the leader, now we're going to go over and go some basic information, because I like to appeal to all different levels of play in this kind of series, because there are some people that might watch it that are brand new to the game. Some people might watch it that are veterans and just want to see what kind of things offer for this leader. So we're going to go over some basic information, being like about the bases, about the aspects, and also about the ratios as well. So even if you're a brand new player, you can get as much information as you want in one go, so that way you've got everything you need to go ahead and start playing Holdo. But if you are one of those people that are more a veteran in the game, you don't really need this basic information, and you just want to know what she's kind of offered with all these different aspect combos, then feel free to go to the description below. Check the timestamps and use those to kind of skip ahead to parts of the video that you want, because they're noted for ease of reference, and you can use them to just skip along to where you need to go. But without that done with, now let's go ahead and get into that basic information and start off with learning about the bases. So, the bases. So, just like I said, with a leader, you need a base, because they are the two central bits of kit you need to play the game. The leader being what you build your deck around, and the base is how you determine if you win or lose the game. Because there's only one way to win a game or lose a game in Star Wars Unlimited, and that is by damage to base. So once you take damage to your base equal to the health on it, you lose, and if you do damage equal to the health of your opponent's base, you win the game. And there are two types of bases in Star Wars Unlimited. There are rare bases, which have differing levels of health, and accompany that with a effect, so like you can see on the left there. And then you got the common bases, which are just skillless bases, all having 30 health, and they don't have much outside the art and like locations and stuff. So we're going to quickly go over the bases and kind of see what we've got, and we'll start off with the rare bases. So, in Star Wars, there are currently, as a set 4, 12 rare bases. We have 4 each set, apart from set 2 where we didn't get them. We had a nice little break from them. And they all have different effects and different varyings of health. You've got 3 different sets of them. So you've got the first set, which are the first off ones, which are ones we've got on the top there. They're all 25 health, and they have an epic action. So just like a deploy, is an action you can take once per game, and only once the game. And once it's used up, that's it, it's gone. And they offer some pretty nice ones. So you have varying levels of use, like you've got Energy Conversion Lab being ECL, which is the green one. This one was the best base in the beginning of the game for the first 2 sets, but has now dropped off for more favour in Tarkin Town because of how the format has developed over time. So Energy Conversion Lab was the best, and now Tarkin Town is arguably the best one from that set now. And then we did have another lot, like I said, we didn't have any in set 2, we had some in set 3, but the set 3 ones were more focused on Twin Suns, because in that version of the game, or that format, you have 2 leaders and a base, whereas in normal constructed play, or normal Premier play, you have 1 leader and 1 base. And those bases all had effects that affected when your leader's out on board, giving them stat boosts like an extra power and extra health, and effects that trigger when you deploy a leader, like drawing a card or getting some tokens. And since you have 2 leaders in that format, you've got better uses to get double the use, whereas in the normal format, you've got just 1 use of it, and they just aren't that great or that useful compared to ever rare bases, especially for what they do, since you only have 1 leader. And then we got the ones from set 4 being new ones, and these are the first ones where we got more health than 30, where normally we got less health to come with the effect. And with the effects on the cards, they seem to be more beneficial the less health you have, and more negative the more health you have. So if you got more health, you can have a negative effect. If you have less health, you have a positive one. And for these ones, we've got 2 that are more than 30 health, being Colossus and Data Vault, being the blue and green one, which have 35 health and 33 health. And they have effects that are supposed to be negative, while the other 2 have 27 health and have more beneficial effects. Now, the thing, like, there's always like kind of a theme to these rare bases, and for set 4, their effects are around deck buildings, the deck building process, and also your opening hand. So for Colossus and Nabat Village, they are all about your opening hand, whereas Colossus decreases your opening hand by 1, so it's open with 6 cards. You open 1 card, which must be a detriment, but it's not that bad, but it still means you have 1 less card. But is it worth the 5 health? That's for you to decide. Now for the Nabat Village, it's 27 health, and its effect gives you 3 more cards in your opening hand, but you can't mulligan. So you start off with 9 cards instead of the usual 6, but you get no mulligan. So if you think about it, with a mulligan, you get to look at 12 cards over 2 hands, being 6 card hand, mulligan to another 6 card hand. So you get to look at 12 cards, but in 2 lots. Whereas this way, you get to look at only 9 cards, but in 1 go, rather than over 2 lots. So you don't get a mulligan, but you look at 9 cards in 1 go. This makes it so if you need to open with a specific kind of card, or you're a combo deck, or need a certain combo or combination of cards, then you're more likely to get into it. But if you do open really bad, you just don't get a mulligan, but at least you've got a better chance of opening how you want to be with more cards. And also, do remember, you don't get to keep those cards because it'll never affect. Where at the first action phase, you have to put 3 cards from your hand at the bottom of your deck in the order you choose. So you're not going to keep those 9 cards. That would be busted. You'd have to do a lot less 27 health. But you do get to open with a bigger chance of finding what you want to open with at least a turn 1 play. So those are the ones that affect your opening hand, and the other 2, Data Vault and Thermal Oscillator, affect your deck building, where they've got more health or less health, so like Data Vault being 33, Oscillator being 27, so you think 4-3 more and 4-3 less, they're just the same amount of effects regarding deck building, but in reverse order, like increase and decrease depending on if they're higher or lower health. So for Data Vault, for that extra 3 health, you have to increase your deck size by 10, meaning that instead of having a 50 card minimum deck, you need to have a 60 card minimum deck, which you might be thinking, that's not great, but there are some decks that we've had in competitive play which have had more than the standard 50, even like quite close to 60 as it is. So is it really a downside? Well, that's up to you. And then for Thermal Oscillator, 3 less health, you think maybe that's 10 less cards, right? Nope, there's only 5 less cards, but still them puts you into the range of needing a 45 card deck rather than 50, and still it means you've got a thinner deck, you've got 5 less cards than normal, meaning you've got more consistency where you should be able to find more things and don't need to fill up your deck maybe with filler when you're stuck for what to get to that like close to 50 range. So those are the rare bases. But if you ever feel like these rare bases, the effects aren't worth the lower health, and you just want to have much health, but you don't have the detriment, then you can always go for a common base, or as I like to call them, vanilla bases, because vanilla means basically no effect, nothing, like no spice or anything like that, just nothing. So vanilla base is what we call the common bases, and as I said, they're all 30 health, and the only differences are in each aspect, you've got different arts with name and location. But as a set 4, there are no benefits to having a certain name or location of a base. So essentially with these ones, you pick the aspect you want for your base, and then you pick your favorite art in that aspect. And these are my preferred arts. And you've got the top ones being the new Hyperspace foil versions of older bases that you get in the Twin Sun step box, and the bottom ones being my preferred ones from the new set. So those are the bases. Now we're going to go over and check about the aspects, because they're never a very important part. So, with the aspects, these are the 6 you have for playing the game. So you have 6 aspects. You have the 4 color ones, which you can find on all leaders, all bases, and then also on most cards in the game. And these all have a specific way to play, and are all named. So you've got the blue one being Vigilance, green one being Command, red one being Aggression, and the yellow one being Cunning. And they are also joined by 2 other aspects, being Villainy, the black one, and Heroism, the white one. And these are 2 that are quite unique compared to the other ones, because not only can be on cards on their own, and also on all leaders, but you can also find them attached with the other aspects, so they can be joined with one of the other color ones. And they are also pretty cool because they have the certain kind of characters on. Like for Villainy, you have the antagonist of the Star Wars universe, and they mostly feature like the very destructive, like controlling effects. And then you have Heroism, which features the protagonists, so the good guys in the Star Wars universe. And they feature like quite rebellious and helpful effects, like supposed to be like support each other and things like that. And like I said, they all have a specific style of play. So what we're going to do is go through the aspects to kind of explain what they're like. So that way, if you've got a certain way you like to play, then maybe that's the aspect you want to go for. So start with Vigilance. That is the very defensive aspect because it's all got the ability of healing, protecting your base through things like shielding and sentinels, and then also, as well as that, having removal through like effects and events. So if you like a very defensive and slow play style that like can play a bit more control, then Vigilance could be a very good one for you. So you can try that out. Now the next one we have is Command, which luckily, if you enjoy this one that we're going to go over, then a good thing is Holdo's already in this aspect, and this is the ramp aspect. So in any game where they've got resource management, then usually there's a ramp one that ramp your resources up, so that way you can play out more things. And that is what Command is, because you got the ramp card, you got ramp in this this aspect, so you can ramp up your resources quicker. So that way you can then go ahead and play out bigger things quicker, or more things out quicker than your opponent can. So if you enjoy ramp or just overwhelming your opponent with a huge board presence or big things quickly, then Command is a perfect one for you to try out. And luckily, like I said, Holdo is already equipped with this one. Next we have aggression, and like the name suggests, a very aggressive aspect, but it's more aggressive in damage than it is just attacking, but it also is the like aggro kind of aspect. If you think of all the aggro decks in the game at the moment, they mostly have red combined either in the leader itself or with their base. And this is one where you want to be aggressive, and it allows you to be aggressive through damage, throwing out damage willy-nilly until it achieves victory at all costs. So if you like the kind of like a burn focus deck, or just be an aggro, aggression is the perfect one for you to go for. And then that leaves us with Cunning. So Cunning is the jack of all trades. It also is one of those aspects that has also like mainly an answer for everything, always having something to combat your opponent's play and even just counter what your opponent might throw at you. So if that appeals to you and that's something you might like, then Cunning is a perfect one for you to pick that you can even join up with Holdo using a base. So those are the 6 aspects we've got, and like I said, Heroism, it comes along attached to the other ones. So with a leader and base, you get 3 aspects. You always get the Heroism or Villainy on your leader, plus one of the other color ones, and then you get another color one from your base. So that leaves us with 4 different aspect combos you can get, and they are these. So remember, you're always going to start off with Holdo by having the heroic, the Heroism aspect and the command aspect. And then depending which one you add for a base, you get these different combos. So you either get green-blue if you go for blue base, double green for a green base, green-red for a red base, and then green-yellow for a yellow base. Now we will go over what the benefits are of each of these aspects, that like when combined with a base with Holdo, what you kind of have and what the benefits are. But first we're going to go over some more basic information, and mainly that is the aspect quality. Because this is something that is very important when it comes to playing a game, because when you go to build your deck, you can put absolutely any card in your deck as long as it's not restricted. And currently the only card restricted is Boba Leader, so you don't have to worry about that. So it means you can put anything you want in your deck. And that is pretty nice, but then when it comes to actually playing those cards, that is when the aspect penalty comes into effect. Because if you don't know, the aspect penalty is where if you go to play a card, and any of the aspects on that card you want to play do not match what's on your leader and or base, then you have to pay an extra 2 on top of that card's cost to play that card out. So we've got a nice little example, because I like to improve on this series, and some people do learn by watching, listening, and some people learn by actually playing, so you can go ahead and try it yourself. Or I'm going to explain it to you now, or you've got this nice visual here to kind of see what I mean with examples. So I've gone with this leader base combo to kind of explain it a little bit easier. So we've got Holdo with a red base, giving you the aspects Heroism, Command, and Aggression, or white, green, and red. So for the first box, the top one we got there, if you want to play a card and the aspects all match what's on your leader and or base, you have to pay no additional cost, you just play it for its normal cost. Easy said, job done. But if you want to play a card and one of the aspects on the card, even the soul aspect or one of the 2 aspects on the card, do not match what's on your leader and or base, you have to pay an additional 2 cost on top of that card because one of those aspects doesn't match. So it means a 2 cost card with one aspect not matching would cost now 4, and that's kind of double the cost. So you double up the cost to play out that card. And also do remember that aspects only provide one of themselves. So with this aspect combo, you got one of each of them. You got one white, one green, one red. So if you want to play a double green, then one of the aspects would be covered the green aspect on Holdo, but since you don't have a second one, you have to pay an extra 2 for that second green aspect, meaning if you play a double aspect card out of aspect while not playing double green, you have to pay an extra 2 to cover that second one, so do bear that in mind. And then for the last example, we got at the bottom, we've got the cards where you've got 2 aspects on the card, and neither of them match what's on your leader and or base. You have to pay an additional 4 on top of that card, so if a 2 cost card had 2 aspects didn't match, that's now an extra 4 on top, meaning that's 6 costs. So that's triple the cost of a card, meaning that you're paying a lot more for that card now. Now, what it might sound like the aspect penalty is like not great, so you don't want to pay more than what you need to pay for a card. Sometimes a card has an effect that's worth it paying an extra cost. Like for example, the perfect example is the double aspect events from set 1. They are 4 cost events that have 4 options, and you can choose any 2 options on them and resolve them however you want. And these effects are just that good, where sometimes people play them without going double aspect and play them in decks that have 2 aspects, so that you can still get them in, rather than pay 4, pay 6 for them, because the effect is just worth playing that extra 2 because of what they do. So do bear in mind that while the aspect penalty is there to kind of make it a bit more costly playing out of aspects, sometimes it is worth it depending on what the card does. So do bear that in mind. So that's all about the aspects. Now we're going to get on to ratios, which is the last bit of basic information. So with ratios, Essentially, in any card game, you can play a certain amount of copies of any given card. In Star Wars Unlimited, that copy amount is free, so you can play up to 3 copies of a card. And I'm going to go over it and help you understand when you want to play the full 3 copies, just 2 copies, or just a sole 1 copy of a card. So, with the 3 copies of card, I did have it before where I tried to tailor the cards more to what the leader does, but since it gets harder and harder with each leader being different and kind of figure out what it is, I've just gone for generic ones to kind of better explain with easier examples you can cover for everyone. So for the 3 copy ratio, this is the ratio to help maximize the likelihood the desired card will be in your hand when needed, and perfect examples of this are cards you want to play on the first turn of the game, or cards you want to see multiple copies, or all 3 copies across the course of the game. And resupply is the perfect example because, especially since you're playing green, you're playing the ramp, and it's the ramp card that is the most easiest to play, cheapest to play, and also is available to all green decks because it's not locked to either villainy or heroism because it's just a sole green card, and you can play it as early as turn 2 because it's a free cost card. And all you do is you play it, put it into play as a resource, job done, you've ramped up. So if you're playing ramp, you usually want to play 3 copies of this, that way when you do go that ramp, you can then ramp as early as turn 2 and start playing bigger things earlier, or even deploy your leader a little bit quicker thanks to ramping. So that is 3 copies of a card. Hopefully that helps explain, or even like I said, a card you want to play turn 1, you might want to include cards that you can play on turn 1 at 3 copies, so that way you've got more likely of making sure you've got a turn 1 play. Next we have the 2 copies, so the cards you want to play 2 copies of, so not the full maximum but not the lowest. And this is usually the ratio for cards that aren't great to draw early in the game, but you still want to go for multiple copies, at least the 2 copies, over the course of the game. A perfect example of this are sometimes the big boss cards or the high costing cards that aren't great to have early. So Rebels 4 is a great example because there's removal in this game, and most of the time with removal, the less of the cost on the card, the more restrictive it is, and the higher the cost of the card, the less restrictive it is. And also when it comes to removal, there is sometimes a little bit of text on the card which says non-leader card. So when it comes to defeating leaders of effects, it's very important, like a very low selection of cards that can take out a leader. Or if they're lower cost, they're very restrictive, and if they're higher cost, they're a lot higher to play. So Rebels 4 is a perfect example because it can hit absolutely any unit, even leaders in this game, but it costs 6. So it's not a card you want to have early in the game, but you'll have it later when your opponent can deploy a leader, so you can then just take it out and not really worry about it. So that is the example of 2 copies of a card. And then we come down to the last one, being the sole copy or the tech choice, as some people refer to as the 1 copy of a card. And this is the ratio for cards that are added to a deck specifically in order to counter a certain situation. And my perfect example here is Restock, which is added to decks to help counter hard control. Because hard control, just like it says on the tin, is focusing on just solely controlling the game, so that way they're not worried about damaging you. They're focused on making sure they are in full control of the game throughout the game. So that means they're not going to be trying to push damage, and since the only way to kind of win the game is by doing damage to a base, the health of the base to the health on the base, means they're not going to be able to do any damage or win. But what they do have is if you go to draw a card and you can't because you've decked out, you take 3 damage for every card you can't draw. So if you can't draw 1 card, that's 3 damage. If you can't draw both cards, that is 6 damage. So hard control deck will kind of keep controlling the game, make it so you deck out, and then you start taking damage for that, so they can win that way. But that is where Restock comes in, because it can choose 4 cards up to 4 cards in your discard, put them on the bottom of your deck in a random order, and with how the game works and how it sequences, you can choose Restock as one of those 4 cards, you can loop it so you can never deck out. And that makes it so hard control decks can now never deck you out, and now they have to go for a different way to kind of deck you out to take damage, or just to do damage to you without relying on that. So hopefully that's helped you understand of the ratios, and now we're going to go on to the information you've been likely looking forward to, which is the benefits to each different aspect combo with Holdo. So, first one, I'm going to go over the double aspect, because this is the one that is more limiting, because it's something that in set 1, when you only had 1 set, you sacrifice the whole different aspect to have access to 3 cards. But now you've got 4 sets, you've got a load more cards, you've got 10 now double aspect cards, meaning that you sacrifice the whole other aspect to have access to these 10 powerful cards. And sometimes it's worth it. Back set 1 is only 1 leader in each aspect was worth it. Now every leader has the option to go with it with a decent opportunity. But we're going to see if it's worth it for Holdo. Because remember, Holdo is very specific in that she's all about the resistance trait. So for double aspect, we've got the ones from the first set being General Krill, attack pattern Delta and command, Out of these ones, Command is probably the only good one out of the first set, because it's one of the ever ramp cards you've got in the in the aspect, and also gives you, like I said, with the double aspect 4 cost events, they give you 4 options, and you can use any 2, so you've got a lot of good options with them. Whereas Krill has a nice effect to kind of give you draw, but it's not worth it for its cost, especially since how fragile it is at 4 health. And Attack Pattern Delta was a cheap card to boost up some units. It takes an action to boost up these units. You need at least 3 to get the full benefit, and then you've got to attack with them one by one. So quite slow and it requires a lot of setup. Then for set 2, we had the next ones being Enterprising Lackeys, Enforced Loyalty, and Endless Legions. Now these are pretty decent, not the best, but then they are quite nice for what they do. Because you've got Enterprising Lackeys showcasing the smuggle effect that we got from set 2, being a very nice one to play from resources. And it's got good stats for its cost, but it requires you to go double green, which might not be the best. And you got Enforced Loyalty, a 2 cost event allows you to defeat one of your own units and then draw 2 cards. So there's a way to draw cards, but you got to defeat your own unit, and unless it's got a win defeat effect, is it really worth doing it? Or if you have a token, which then you're not really doing anything to advance the game. And you got Endless Legions. Now there are decks built around this card because it's a high costing card, probably the highest I think at 14, and it allows you to play all the units you have in your resources out for free. Now it's that great stronger card that it's got decks built around it, but they're more gimmicky and kind of more predictable, or like don't really interact until they pull off the combo. So unless you feel like waiting until 14 resources, which you kind of can with ramp to play it off, it might not be worth it unless you're focusing around it. And then for set 3, we had the next ones being Maz Amadeus, Manufactured Soldiers, and Pyrrhic Assault. And out of these, really Maz Amadeus is the only good one. And it's just because it's a turn 1 play, well, a card you can play turn 1, that also allows you to keep making sure you got units to play every turn. By every time you play a unit, you can rest him to look at top 4 cards, grab a unit there, add it to your hand, and then you've got another one to play in the next turn. So you can keep making sure you've got units to play. Doesn't have any power, but it's still pretty decent. But then once again, you go for double green to get that. And it's just if you have enough units double green that are worth it, especially for Holdo. And the other 2 events are not great because you got the Manufactured Soldiers creates tokens, and it's free cost to create tokens, and they're not particularly anything you worry about because the tokens don't have resistance, so they're not going to help with Holdo. And then Pyrrhic Assault just turns all your units into little bombs, but then you need to have units out, and then you're wasting a time on an event where unless you've got a huge board to make it worth it, you're not really getting much out of that. And then with set 4, now with the first 3 sets, we had 3 double aspect cards. Now for set 4, we only had 1, and we got Unity of Purpose. Now this is a pretty powerful one because it's a 6 cost that is able to give all your friendly units an extra 1/1 for every unit you control with a different name. So you have to have a load of different name cards. So if you've got 6 cards with a different name, they all get a +6/6 for that turn, so me a game in the swing. But I'm not sure. We got to first see if there's enough cards, just in green if you want to play double green, or even in the heroic trait, that could be worth having with the Holdo's effect. So out of the double aspects, currently with these double aspect cards, there's no benefit like you run Command to have the helpful ramp, or maybe Amadeus to make sure you've got a steady supply of units, but that's only 2 cards, and not really worth sacrificing a whole other aspect that might have more things like more resistance cards for you, because I don't think double aspect is a good way to go for Holdo, but I just want to make sure I cover it, so that way if you're ever wondering, you have the knowledge why. Now, before we go into the other aspects, where when you combine a base you get something else for the other ones, we're going to first go over and see what kind of is offered in just Holdo's aspects itself, so in like Command. So the heroic side of Command, you do have quite a few good, quite a few resistance cards. You don't have too many. That's the sad thing, is that with the resistance trait, there's not too many units. And here I've put all the resistance cards we've got in green anyway. And you don't have any for turn 1 play because so I've put some better turn 1 plays being Battlefield Marine and Phoenix Squadron A-Wing, which are just 2 cost units you can put in every arena that you can start off with, which are pretty good for the game because they got probably the most power for their cost. And then after we get to the higher costing, so 3 onwards for turn 2, that's when you start hitting resistance ones. So you have like Wexley being, or Snap Wexley being a good one because you can play him as a unit or a pilot upgrade. And if you play him as a unit, he's got pretty decent stats, and then makes it so when he's played or when he attacks, the next resistance card you play cost 1 less. And then if you put as an upgrade, you get a look at the top 5 cards of your deck to find a resistance card and draw it and add it to your hand. Well, reveal it and add it to your hand. The nice thing is that while he's an upgrade, he then still gets like the nice thing about being an upgrade is that even if you don't run a resistance vehicle, you can always put this on it, and since it's a resistance upgrade, Holdo can still then do the boost. So Wexley is a good one because you can then you can play any vehicle then as long as you put a Wexley on it, you can then boost up by Wexley. Look for more resistance cards which may be in your deck. Hopefully you got enough to find, and then boost up the card with Holdo. And then you've got the next ones being like Veteran Fleet Officer, which basically one player gives you an X-Wing token. Remember, the sad thing about the X-Wings and the whatever the everyone is that they're not like any trait, they're just fighters and then vehicles. So they don't have a trait like the clones and the battle droids do. So it allows you to make two things, one a resistance card to get boosted by Holdo, and then an X-Wing so you got sunk in both arenas. Then for 4 costs, you've got Poe Dameron and Resistance Blue Squadron. So Poe Dameron's quite a nice one. It can once again, it's never one of its upgrades. So you can either put it down as a 4-cost free and create an X-Wing. And then the option when you play as a unit to either put it on that same X-Wing you made, put on a different one, or just leave it as a unit there. And remember, if you do put on as an upgrade, it's then a resistance upgrade on the unit, so then Holdo can then boost that unit, which is nice, pretty nice for it. And then you got Resistance Blue Squadron, which is nice. When you played, you can deal damage to a unit. You can tell the number of friendly space units you've got. So if you've got a lot of space units, a lot of damage. Otherwise, it's just a 3/4 that can then do some damage to something, because at least does 1 damage counting itself. And then we got Radius as well, being your more high-costing resistant unit, being a 7-cost capital ship, 8 power, 6 health, which if you control another resistance unit, then it gains Sentinel. And when defeated, you can deal damage equal to its own power, so it's a minimum of 8 to one of your enemy units. And then you got Ewing Reinforcement as a way to, like, one of those big good cards for the later game where you can just play out a load of units or one big unit from the top 10 cards of your deck, which is pretty cool. So that's what you got on the heroic side of command. On the non-heroic side of command, there's not much else resistance. You've got another resistance pilot that can upgrade and still get the boost from Holdo, because you got Yarrick Jaeger, which doesn't do anything as a unit on the ground, just a 2/3 for a 2. But then while piloting gives a 2/2 boost and potentially make it Sentinel if you've got Sunk also in both arenas. So if Sunk in the ground arena and in both arenas. So yeah, and you also got a pilot as well. Clone pilot being a pretty decent pilot as well, like quite a simple one in the normal green. And you got some other ones that you got Hu Yang being a nice way to kind of make Jarek a little bit better by being a ground unit. You can then boost up that space unit, so you got a boost on whatever Jaeger's on, and then Hu Yang being a Sunk in the ground arena to make sure that Jarek is getting the Sentinel on. Then you got some good vehicles as well, like you got Resupply Carrier being a ramp vehicle, and Reinforcement Walker being a nice big one from the ground arena that's offering you either healing or just draw more cards. And you got some pretty good events as well, like you got Timely Invention and Resupply being good ones. Timely Invention can play things and then give it Ambush, being a very nice skill, and Resupply being your easy go-to ramp. And you also got Eject being a nice one to mess with the new pilot mechanic, because it allows you to take off a pilot off an upgrade and throw it back in the ground arena, exhausted. And then you get to draw a card. You've got some cool combos with this with certain pilots on your own, or you can just do it to disrupt your opponent's ones as well. And that's all the stuff for command, and now let's see what else you get offered if you put a different aspect base in the mix. So first off, we'll go for Vigilance, and there's not too many Vigilant or Resistance cards. Like, I'm trying to put in each different aspect. I'm going to try and put showcase as many Resistance cards so you can kind of see what you've got on offer, because there haven't been many Resistance cards. There's not many from even like the First Order or Resistance. And here are the ones you've got. So the Resistance cards you have are Page Tico is a nice turn 1 play that you can play either in the ground arena or as an upgrade on a vehicle to get that boost from Holdo, either way. And then you've got Rose Tico, which is a pretty nice one, a ground unit that can basically defeat shields that you might put on units to give experience to units, so you can kind of boost things up and comes in shielded as well. You got Ray as well, being another resistance one that can then start healing up units, and if you have something that's not a heroic unit, it can give a shield token to it, so you can kind of make use of Rose. And then you got the Cargo Frigate, being a resistance space unit, that the more damage it takes, the weaker it gets. So like, the more damage it takes, it loses power if it takes damage. So those are the resistance cards you've got in blue. So you got 4 in blue, but then still you've got 5 in green. So you can make a good combination with Vigilance to make use of the resistance stuff. And Also, since you've got some that are like with Poe and stuff, and even Page as upgrades, if you go with Space Focus and then put those upgrades on them, then still they've got a resistance upgrade on them, so that way Holdo can still boost those even if the unit itself is not a resistance card. Different other cards I put in that can be pretty good is you got like a Resolved Arc being a nice turn 1 play. That's a vehicle you can put a resistance upgrade on to then get the boost from Holdo. You got Red Squadron as well being a nice turn 2 onwards vehicle that you can then get some draws for to draw into some of those resistance cards. And you got Cassian as a pretty decent pilot as well that can then also try to get you more draws. And you got Luke Skywalker being basically one of the best like heroic blue legendary in the game to help you out and just very good for its high costing as well. And then in the non-blue, in the non-heroic side of blue, you've got still you get one additional resistance card in Desperate Commando. Now it's a resistance to 2 cost. One you can play as turn 1, being a 2-cost 2/2 that when defeated gives another unit -1/1 for the face. You could finish off whatever it takes out potentially. And you got things like Astromech being a pretty good upgrade that can then heal off something when it's upgraded, so you can potentially heal something it is basically put on. You also got Trace Montez being a nice one that kind of a nice healing pilot when we attack. You can heal do damage off any number of units, so you can heal yourself up. And you got some other ones like Outer Rim Outlaws being a nice shielded free cost 3/3 you can play so it's turn 2, and then Survivor's Gauntlet being having a nice niche effect to basically move around upgrades. You could move around your resistance upgrades off of something that's about to die to itself or another one, being a move around to keep them safe, to keep that benefit of having the resistance upgrades on units, or even moving off your opponent around your opponent's units, just messing with their upgrades. Speaking of upgrades, you also do have Predisposition, pretty nice one, being the first upgrade that minuses stats, and also exhausts what it's put on. And you got some nice events, like you got Evidence of Crime being a nice one to kind of, just like with Survivor's Gauntlet, mess with upgrades, because you can not only just mess around with them, but take control of an upgrade that your opponent has that's 3 or less, and then put on whatever you want. And then also Rebel's Fall being a good example of some of the removal events you have in blue. So blue does have a fair few resistance cards, you can make use of them, and some of them are upgrades, some of them not. They offer like some nice healing, so there's a decent amount of resistance cards in blue to go with Holdo to make for a good combination there. And next we have Resistance, and I think this is one that has probably the most resistance cards outside of green, because you got BB-8, you got Black 1, you got Tactical Heavy Bomber, Poe Dameron, and you've got Black 1 as well. So that's 5 resistance cards just in the heroic side as well, and offers some pretty nice options. Remember, since you got some that are upgrades like BB-8, and even with the space vehicles, you've then got a good amount to kind of boost Holdo. Because remember, Holdo is all about boosting those resistance cards, so you kind of want to have resistance cards or resistance upgrades to make sure you can use their effects regularly. So BB-8 is quite nice that you can even use them when you upgrade to potentially pay 2 more than its cost to pilot, so you can restand a resistance unit. So if you got this on a resistance unit, you can then restand, or if not, you can restand a different resistance unit that is not on. So that's pretty decent there. It could be something that you've already boosted by Holdo that you don't want to then restand, but you've put BB-8 on something else. And then you got Black 1 being a good turn 1 player that gets an extra power when he's upgraded. Could be by a pilot or anything, and if you control Poe, which you do have 2 kind of versions of Poe, being the 5-cost one and the 4-cost one from green, to be able to make sure you can get that 1 damage from when it swings. And then you got Green Squadron A-Wing as a rebel unit, you can potentially take tier 1, so never a good tier 1 play. And then you got the higher costing one like Tactical Heavy Bomber and Poe Dameron being your resistance 5 costs. All each have pretty nice effects where like both on attack ones, so Tactical Heavy Bomber does damage, indirect damage to your opponent, equal to the power on the card, so the more power it has, the more damage it does, and if it does damage to your base through that damage, then you get a draw card. And Poe has nice options where you can discard up the 3 cards and get one of the free options you have, depending on how many cards you discard, but you can't use the same one more than once. Then you got Black 1 being Poe's ship. Now it's like the higher costing one for Alpha Set 1, which when played or when defeated, you can discard your hand and draw 3 cards. So it's a nice way to kind of revitalize your hand if you're top decking, and is high costing. You can still boost up with Holdo, and also remember you can put pilots on it as well. Then you got some nice events, like you got 4 calls to believe in, and That Ship They Hate being nice ones, like That Ship They Hate. Well, they hate that ship. Be able to play in a vehicle at lower cost, at 2 less cost than its normal cost, which is cool. So bring out like 2 turns earlier. And while your opponent does get 2 TIE Fighters, they're just 1/1 tokens, so you don't have to worry about too much. And then you got 4 calls, which is more like a way to finish off games, to be more aggressive with burn, which is pretty nice. Now in the the non-heroic side, you do have an additional resistance card. So you got 1 extra one, being determined recruit, being another resistance pilot that you can put on a unit. Doesn't give them a massive amount of HP, just 1, but it does give you 3 more power, so it makes it even stronger. And then you can go ahead and, while having this on a vehicle, have Holdo then be able to boost it because it's resistance upgrade. And then you got some nice units. I think I just reuse the same ones over and over again because it's just a good showcase of it. You got Saving Fang Fighter is a good way to knock off upgrades. Tarkin is a way to boost your vehicles while being in the ground arena, and Cham as additional ramp as well. So the first time we've got ramp in red, that kind of, if you're behind on resources, Cham could help you equalize that by being on the ramp. Then you got Arm to the Teeth, one of the few upgrades you can put on even vehicles on anything. That gives a boot, that allows it when the unit attacks to give a boost to another unit, +2 for that phase, +2 on power, and you can also smuggle it in. And then you got some nice events. So you got System Shock being a knockoff once again because aggression has a fair bit of upgrade hate, so being able to knock off upgrades and even then damage whatever it was upgraded. Open fire just for out damage, and even bomb and run, then choosing one arena and do damage, 3 damage to all units in that arena, even yours and your opponent's. So if your opponent's going like wide in an area, you can use bomb and run to just basically just go ahead and just nuke it all, which is cool. So that's aggression, probably the better option to go for because it has the most resistance units. So it's probably best to go for that way to make use of resistance, or make full use of Holdo's effect. And for lastly, we have Cunning. And now, this is the one I think that has the least amount of resistance units, because I think the only resistance unit it's got, can't remember exactly about the non-Cunning, but I think it is just in Cunning. The only resistance units you've got is Fireball and Black Squadron Scout Wing. So 2 units you got resistance, so you do have some in Holdo's normal aspects as well in command, but you only get 2 additional ones with your Cunning. But Cunning just offers some pretty nice stuff, like you got some cool pilots like the Dagger Squadron pilot and Anakin Skywalker. Plus, you got a good R2D2 for a turn 1 play to help you kind of get access to see the fine things you're looking for. And then you got ever good pilots like Han Solo as well to make use of, being a good either upgrade or a ground unit to play because it's just solid for what it does. And then with the resistance unit you get Fireball, which can ambush and play turn 1 in ambush, which is cool, but then takes damage to the re-face and in the turn if it takes 1 damage. And the other one is a high costing 5 cost, 4/6, but if you upgrade it, it can attack and gain a boost if you for that attack as well, so it could be pretty powerful. And then you got nice events like you got Bamboozle, being able to rest something and knock all the upgrades on it back to your opponent's back to the hand, so you can kind of, if your opponent's got a load of upgrades on a unit, you can then knock them all back and rest that card with Bamboozle, which is pretty cool, and you can potentially play it for free. But it's Cunning, never Cunning card instead of paying its cost, and even Spark Rebellion being a nice hand control card. And then in the non-heroic side, once again, you've got no. I tried to look for it, but there's no resistance cards that are not in just normal Cunning. So unfortunately, you only get the 2 for Cunning, so you get the least amount of resistance units in Cunning. But you get some pretty nice ones, like you got the top row being your good early plays, like Independent Solo being a very nice pilot to put on stuff, and then Land Speeder and Crafty Smugglers, good turn 1 plays, either having ambush or shielded. And then you got Death Space Skirmisher and Geonosis Patrol Fighter is pretty nice vehicle units you can then potentially put resistance upgrades on, and also then have nice destructive effects. And even then as well, Cunning has a lot of good events. You've got things like Surprise Strike to attack with more power. Now there are 2 of them to play out more, so you can potentially play you can potentially go ahead and play, well, you don't have many resistance cards. You can potentially, well, you got some good use on this, very good card, just I'm not sure. You need to kind of, like the best way to go is get Poe out, but then you have to play this out of aspect if you want to incorporate red as well, or then play that out of aspect, which is going to be even worse. And then you got Commandeer as a way to kind of take your opponent's vehicles that aren't piloted, so you can then ready attack with it and then give it back to their hand at the end of the turn. Well, when you after that, which is quite nice. So you got some nice stuff in there, but maybe not the best because you've got the least amount of resistance units in Cunning. Also, do remember that we do have cards, like I said, with Heroism. They're unique in that they can go with the other aspects, but also go on their own cards. So you do have some cards that are just Heroism. And these are the ones that I thought were the best because you got the only ever 2 resistance units. You got more in just heroism. So you got a few ever ones. You got resistance X-wing, being a good turn 1 play that gets more power. If it, gets an extra 1/1 to its stats if it's got a pilot on. So any pilot I do, even like hard 2G2 here, which can pilot for 0 onto a unit, but also allow more pilots to be on that unit and also go on the unit even if it's already got a pilot on. And then you got the dilapidated ski speeder, well, being a good one where it's a free cost, free 7, where when played it deals 3 damage to itself, but then it's got a lot of bulk, so it's technically a free 4 when it comes down, and then it's resistance unit as well, so you can even power up more. And then Sabine's Masterpiece being a nice one because it gets an effect when it attacks, depending on whatever aspects you have on board, on your board, no matter what arena, just on your board. And it's either heal 2 from a base if you got a blue unit, give an experience token to a unit if you got a green unit, which you can always have thanks to Holdo. And then you got if you got a red unit, you can deal damage to a base or a unit. And if you got yellow, you can either exhaust already a resource, which is cool. So if you got one of each of those aspects, you get all of them, or you get one depending on which ones you've got. So it's a pretty nice one. So additional ones you can actually have in the deck as well. And then that brings us to the last bit of the video, where I like to go over my preferred aspects, because like how I've improved the aspect punty kind of guide, I also have incorporated this as a last set, because this is something that was asked of in the early days of doing the series, back for like set 1 and 2. People used to ask for my preferred aspects, so I decided to put them in at the end of the video, so you can kind of, if you're still unsure, you can kind of have a little bit of help and advice here. And now, since Holdo is all about focusing on resistance, and you kind of want to have as many resistance units or resistance upgrades in your deck, I've kind of gone for my preferred aspects to be red, because it's got the most it's got the most resistance cards. Like you've got Wexley, a Searcher, you got Poe's a good one to kind of make sure you've got a unit play, and even BB-8 as well being a nice upgrade, meaning that you can be a nice pilot. So make sure even if you're not running, don't have too many resistance cards, you can put these on vehicles. That way now they have resistance upgrades, so you can boost them with Holdo, and they've got the most amount of resistance cards in it. And if I weren't playing red or preferred a different aspect, I would go for blue, because that's the next most amount of resistance units to kind of boost in as well. Like you got Page being an upgrade, and you got also Rose and Ray being pretty nice ones as well to kind of help you out there, being ones that you can just boost up without needing the then play out a unit, then upgrade just to boost up. So those are my preferred aspects. And then that is it for the video. So that's everything about Admiral Holdo. So if you're hopefully looking to build and try out Admiral Holdo, hopefully it's giving you as much help as you can so you can build it to suit you and your playstyle. And that is it for this one. So thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe to help us out, because once again we're on our way to 2,000 subs. We're hoping to get there by the end of this year at least. And also do note that we got the last one for the Cunning leaders, being Wedge and Tilly's tomorrow. So thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.